She found this document. Now this document is an original agreement between, as it says, Decus and Queen Victoria in the year 1665. So I'll read this to you because the woman Nancy Scanny had given me this document because it helped her in court. They actually won their court case because of this document. So she gave it to me upon me giving me her word, my word to her, that we would utilize this and that we would teach people about this as to what is truly going on in the world. So I'll read it to you. Now, there is a big body of the document, and I'll say up to here, this part of the document really is of no significance. It is quite simply a business arrangement. This bottom part is the main meat and potatoes of the document. But I'll read the whole thing. It is something that was created in 1665, but as you see, on the bargain, 1835, meaning it is renewed. New King of Canada. Keep in mind that this is Queen Victoria writing to new King of Canada. I am writing to you. We have to change the rules of the whites. We will put head offices in Canada on the Indian Act and superintendent on provincial rules, lawyer for your business, doctor, Indian affairs, and on this Indian Act and rules of Canada. In the year 1820, we sent Simpson to control the company. Now remember, this is the Queen talking about their company. In the year 1821, we sued Hudson for selling your goods. So I am renewing the treaty and money, $120 a year, tax-free. The rules of the Indian Act of Canada, when the year is due, the superintendent will give you the money tax-free. Now she's talking to the native people, and she's identifying new King of Canada. So she's talking about somebody who is on the same level as her. Anyways, when she says that all of this is now put upon the native people, the doctor, Indian affairs, the Indian Act, the rules of Canada, and that according to that agreement, the Queen will give them $120 a year. The superintendent will give you the money tax-free. Now the moment that the people take that money tax-free, then they are bound by all the rules, what says the rules of the Indian Act of Canada. So quite simply by the native people taking that money, agreeing to this, they put themselves under the Indian Act. It's not something that truly was forced upon us. It's something that had to be agreed to. Now you will have to make the township. The whites will have to pay you for everything you have. Now think of this. Now you will have to make the township. That means now you, the native, will have to make the reserve. It is the native that agrees to go to the reserve. If you take that $120, you have to make the township. You have to make the village. The whites will have to pay you for everything you have. You make head townships in Canada. Have reservations to keep the whites off the reserve. And free Indian navigation. Free gates for settlers and timber of 100 acres. Now that timber of 100 acres is for settlers. Now this is what's agreed upon. When the natives take that $120, they agree to the rules of the Indian Act of Canada. They agree to make the townships, meaning the reserves, to make the villages that are become taxable. And they agree that every non-native has free gates, meaning free travel, but also 100 acres of forest. So the natives are agreeing to give every non-native 100 acres of wooded forest land. We leave it as you gave it to the settlers. Only the pine for the lumbermen, and 60-cent share on navigation rights if you are in the boat. It's free traveling all over Canada, any place you go. If you want a house in Canada, you go to the superintendent, put in your order, and he will see that it is built. What this means is that every native across so-called Canada is guaranteed Canada is supposed to provide for them a free house. Now that isn't just gonna say, okay, you do this for me and I'll give you a house. Look at what the natives are giving up. The natives are giving up to every non-native 100 acres of wooded land. So that means all of our land is gone. It means, actually, when it identifies free navigation for non-natives, it means we no longer have the authority over our own lands. So in exchange for all of that is a free house. It will cost you nothing. They will pay for it. I will put a warden in to mind your game. Wherever your animal will make its track in Canada, you can follow it until you get it. If the whites want it, if the whites want your animal, they will have to pay for it with the license. If you work for a white man, they cannot garnish your wages. The whites will have to pay the taxes. That means that if a native works in the non-native world, they are non-taxable. You cannot tax the native people. You are entitled to 3% on the taxes, and 3% on the timber, and $3 stumpage, besides, and 5% on the mines. So this means that the native people agreeing to this document will get 3% taxes on timber and stumpage and for mining. So this means that the native people agree to allow the clear cutting of our forests, agree to the mining of our land, the digging up of our Mother Earth. Let's see, $3 stumpage besides, and 5% on the mines. And if you have money in the band, it is 5%. Also, game money is yours. If the whites crowd you, you are to go to the superintendent and put in your complaint, and he will take it up to the lawyer and he will be prosecuted. So if there's whites coming around encroaching upon our lands, and that doesn't mean that they are just coming to live there. As you see, it identifies their business practices. So if their business practices crowd us, come into our territories, then those companies, those people can be prosecuted. The bargain is made. I am sending you a metal as good as gold. And as you remember, in the non-native world, this is the thing that they cherish the most, the gold. As long as there is an Indian in the country, generation to generation. Now what does that mean, an Indian in the country, generation to generation? Well, back in the year 1665, or even when it was renewed in 1835, an Indian in the country. It may be hard to understand what that means back then, but if we move ahead a few hundred years and we look at where Stephen Harper apologized for the residential schools, he identified that the residential school was designed to kill the Indian in the child. So that means that when they say, as long as there is an Indian in the country, that means as long as there is still a person within their identity. Because the Indian, when you think of Stephen Harper in apologizing for the residential schools, when he said to kill the Indian and the child, what was the Indian? The Indian was, of course, they had to change us from being protectors of the land into becoming destroyers of the land. And as you see, this whole document changes the native people to become the destroyers of the land. So in here, this is the small print in the contract. It tells you that just by accepting this contract, there will no longer be an Indian in the country, generation to generation. That's why they stipulate that this only is good as long as there's an Indian in the country. So it is a trap. It is a bear trap you stick your hand into, and once you're in there, you can't get out. You don't realize that you are dead after this. Anyways, Indian in the country, generation to generation. King, chief, brother. I am telling you, a nephew is born, my son. I am your sister, Queen Victoria. Now what that means, king, chief, brother, Queen Victoria, for her to say this, meaning or knowing and understanding that the British Crown has already been around the world, colonizing around the world, destroying people, that they never, ever once identified anyone as being their equal. Because to say king, chief, brother, that means that the native people are the equal to that woman they call the queen, Queen Victoria. And when she says, I am telling you a nephew is born, my son, King George, she is saying that the native people are uncle to her son who is king. Now, when you know back then, a long time ago, the term uncle is understood and utilized much differently than it is today. An uncle is just somebody who is, you are the brother of either your father, the brother of either your father or your sister. That's an uncle, a blood uncle. But back then, an uncle, that was a status, it was a stature. If you were a nephew, an uncle was here. A nephew was subordinate to an uncle. An uncle was higher and more powerful. So when she says king, chief, brother, she puts them on the same level, and she puts her son beneath the chief, beneath the native people. I am your sister, Queen Victoria. Forever, this bargain we made between you and I will stand as long as there is water in the lakes and run in the rivers and creeks, and the green grass grows. The bargain of the year 1665 comes the year 1835 is good as long as the sun and moon shines. It cannot change. This bargain is for the King Chief of Canada from Queen Victoria. And anyways, there is the thing that you can identify there that comes from the public archives. This is in, again, the Smithsonian Institute. Now again, all of this part of the document, keeping in mind, this is a contract. This is a business contract. It is not a treaty. When you see what is here, the Degani Diohade, this is the original treaty here. This is the treaty that when the non-native came into our house, if you could imagine, a house with many rooms, living room, dining room, bedrooms, everything. It's like a regular house. When the non-native came into the house, they had come into contact with the Kanienkeha'ka, the Mohawk people. And it was the Mohawk people that presented this to every non-native that came here. the Kanienkeha'ka. This recognizes identity and that we travel down the river of life together and none interferes. We do not touch, we do not interfere with the other. This contract is identity, and in the non-natives side, they are in their vessel. We are in our canoe, and you cannot have a foot in a canoe and a vessel. You cannot serve two masters. You must be within one identity. So when this was presented, of course, we didn't know. We had no clue that the white man would not abide by his word. We had no clue that he was a liar. So when we presented this, we figured that the non-native is bound by their word. But the non-native isn't even bound by their contracts. The non-native isn't bound by anything. They have proven to us through the Turo Wampum, through the destruction of it, that they are liars. Now this again was made when you come into the house. So if you imagine, you in your home, you have your children in your house, you have your family, your nephews, your nieces, your cousins, everybody's in your house, and you are standing at the doorway to your house, and the white man comes to your house, and so you hold up the Kanienkeha'ka, and you say, as we have said, that you cannot come into our house unless you abide by the Kanienkeha'ka. These are the terms and conditions of coming into our house. So that's where the non-native said, oh yeah, okay, good idea, sure, we agree. But they only agreed with the intent to get into our house. Now, you're the mother, you're the father, you're standing at the front door and you say, this is how you get into our house, otherwise you can't come in. Okay, so you figure, and as we figured, that the non-native would honor their word. They didn't. So they come in, and so they come to our children and they say, hey, you got a nice room here. We would like to have some of your trees. We'd like to have some of the wood off of the walls in your living room. We'd like to take your seats and make houses out of it. And so they say this to our children, and the children don't know what the intent is of the non-native. So the children in the living room make an agreement with the non-native. That is called Treaty 1. And all the way up until they go all the way through the house, make Treaty 2, Treaty 3, Treaty up until Treaty 10, Treaty 100, whatever. The numbered treaty systems are not treaties. They are business arrangements, because there is only one treaty, the original treaty of the Kanienkeha'ka, that was the terms and conditions of them coming into the house. So all what you see here, business arrangement. Now in any business contract there is small print, and again we'll go back to here. This is the small print. What does it truly mean? This is not understood by anyone in the world. What this means is that one single family identified in the year 1665, they identified that they are going to stop the moon from shining. They are going to stop the green grass from growing. They're going to stop the waters from flowing in the creeks, in the rivers. They're going to dry out the lakes. They identified this over 400 years ago. Because when you look here, as it says, as long as there is an Indian in the country, generation to generation, this agreement stands. So we know that they set out to kill all the Indians in the country. First off, let's go back to 1665. Well, you can say the Indian Act didn't exist yet. Well, what did exist? Smallpox-infested blankets. So they gave us smallpox-infested blankets to kill who? It targets a specific category of the population. It targets elders who carry the culture, and it targets children who will continue the culture. So they utilized biological warfare upon the people to ensure that their small print would be carried out as long as there's an Indian in the country, generation to generation. So they started killing off the Indians in the country, the people within their identity. They stole the children, kidnapped them into the residential schools to do exactly what Stephen Harper said, but Stephen Harper did not say it enough, did not identify it. He only said that the residential schools were designed to kill the Indian in the child. He did not say that Canada, the British Crown, the Catholic Church utilized everything within their machination, right up to that guy they called the Pope, right up to the so-called enforcement of law, the RCMP, were utilized to kidnap children, to rape children, to murder children, to the point of where they are no longer an Indian. Now, if you look at that process and compare it to a woman who is being raped. Now, a woman who is being raped, she will resist. But if the rapist continues, he will beat her into submission until her will, her spirit is gone, her will to survive, until her identity is gone out of her. And this is what they have done with the people, and it's identified here. They are going to kill all the Indians in the country. And as you know, this is what they have set out to do. And this is what they have pretty much carried out right now, because all the Indians in the country have agreed to this, which puts them under the Indian Act, which changes their identity, which means there is no longer an Indian in the country, generation to generation. And if there's no Indian in the country, what happens? As long as there is an Indian in the country, I am telling you that this deal made between you and I will stand. So, that's the fine print. They told us they are going to kill all the Indians in the country. That is a fact. We are seeing today, if we skip through all the rivers and the green grass and all of that, and we go right to the moon, now today, you know that they are attacking the moon to destroy the moon with the same practices that they have destroyed our Mother Earth with. What this document identifies is that there has been and continues to be an evil force, a sinister, dark, evil force in the world, in power, overpowering people, at least since the year 1665, because it is put in writing in a contract. Now you got to ask yourself, as Britain went around the world and carried out this colonization everywhere, why was a document or an agreement such as this not created with other people? It was not created with other people because only here was there resistance to colonization. Everywhere else they resisted too, and everybody got killed and wiped out. But what was it here different is that the native people here were matrilineal. We are a matrilineal society. That means as a matrilineal society, the sons follow in the footsteps of our mothers. So what son would allow his mother to be raped? No son would allow that. So this is what happened here. What was different is that the native people were able to resist the rape and to be able to fend it off enough that they had no choice but to make an agreement. Now this is where, again, in time, where we did not know. We did not understand the non-native. The non-native is corrupt. Their governmental system has subdued all the non-native people, making the non-native people corrupt, without the non-native people realizing that they have been corrupted. But when you know that this is a policy to kill the moon, it is to stop the rivers from flowing in, the waters from flowing in the rivers and in the lakes. We know that the lakes are drying up. We know that the rivers are polluted. We know that the water table of so-called North America is destroyed. It is poisoned. So these things are dying. They've identified it from hundreds of years ago. There is a slow progression. It's identified to kill the people, and then once you get through the people, because as long as there's an Indian in the country, they say they can't destroy, basically. So you get rid of the Indians in the country, and then what is fair game and what they are going after is the water in the lakes and the rivers and the creeks and the green grass. And then the sun and the moon. They are out to destroy it all. Now we can look at this in one of two ways. What I am presenting to you right now, it is clear. It is identified in their fine print from hundreds of years ago. Or there's something else here. Something hidden that you cannot see. We are talking about a woman they call Queen Victoria, who represented the British Crown, who went around the world colonizing, who seen all around the world cultures collapse under their feet. But when she's here, she has to make this agreement. Why would she make this agreement? Now, I will present something that may be a possibility, but I highly doubt this. I believe that it is the first possibility where they identify they are going to destroy the people, the rivers, the lakes, the waters, the land, the sun, and the moon. But when you look at the contract, it makes no sense for her to say King Chief Brother. She identifies that the native chief here is her equal, is her brother, and an uncle to her son. What does that mean? Here is a woman who represents male dominance around the world, who represents thieving, raping, murdering. That is a woman. Now, I will say that the only possibility here, if they did not, that family, if they did not identify they're going to destroy everything, the only possibility then is that this woman was locked completely within a male-dominant system and was looking for a way out, a back door. And so she created a contract that can seemingly go either way. Because as long as there is an Indian in the country, she is bound by this. And what is this? Identifying that the chief here, the native here, is not only her equal to say King Chief Brother, but is uncle to her son, King George, which puts the native people on a higher level than the British Crown. I will say that the only other possibility is that the woman, Queen Victoria, locked in a line of male dominance, had seen the only way out of male dominance was through the original peoples here of Turtle Island. Because she can't fight it from within her own body. Because if she did, you know how corrupt they are over there, they would kill her. So she could not fight this on her own. She reached out and extended her hand to the native people to save her children, to bring peace to her children, because she's seen the power that the women have here in Turtle Island, that it is the woman's authority, that it is the women that established the male chiefs, that it is the woman that is the authority that carries law, that the land belongs to the women, that the children belong to the women, that everything is within the power structure of the woman. and that the land belongs to the women, the children belong to the women, that the women have the freedom and authority upon the land, that throughout all Turtle Island, a woman could walk across Turtle Island bare and carry, according to the non-native world, a pot of gold on her head, and she would never be violated. This is the power of the women here in Turtle Island. And when she seen the power that the women had, this is why I say there is only two options here. That if she did not identify they are the destroyers of absolutely everything, then she's identifying that she is crying out for help, that she has reached out for help of the native people here, the original peoples of Turtle Island, to establish peace upon her corrupt warring sons. So this document, it is a lot of doublespeak, because again, it is a contract. So remember, everyone who has the numbered contract system, the numbered treaty system, those are not treaties. Look at your treaty that you call Treaty 1 to Treaty 10. Those things are business arrangements, business agreements. Have a business lawyer, a corporate lawyer look at it. Have a politician look at it, and a politician will tell you that's not a political agreement. That is a business agreement. So when the people throughout Turtle Island in the numbered treaty system utilize their treaty, they are actually agreeing to be bound by everything that is in this document. You agree to be bound by the Indian Act. And once you agree to this, you agree to lock yourself into a process of killing the Indians in the country. You agree to suicide. You agree to laying down and dying peacefully. No, this is not us. We can see the truth in the non-native. And the truth in the non-native is that the entire population of the non-native has become corrupted. Not that they are corrupt. They have become corrupted through this organization right here. The most corrupt organization on the planet. And to this day is the only remaining empire that has seen through their entire plan to actually attack now our grandmother moon. This is who they are. This is a dark, sinister organization that has been in power for hundreds of years, destroying around the world, and identified, laid out its plan was to go through the land, go through the waters, kill the people off so you can get through the waters and the land, with ultimate goal to attack our grandmother moon, which is exactly where they are with their technology today. So this document, it must be known by all people. This is one of the most important documents in history, because it tells you clearly about what the original peoples of Turtle Island are and what this one dark, sinister, corrupt family is in this world. So now that you know about this document, now I laid it out pretty fast, and even though it seemed like I went over it a little bit, you actually have to examine this document over and over and over to really truly understand it. There is more to it than obviously what is here. If we look at just this section of the fine print, well, it's this much. It's a small area, but it covers everything in creation. And so we know here, we see over the generations a dark, sinister plan that when I look at this, when I examine what has happened in the world, I cannot believe that humans would destroy the environment in which we have grown from. I cannot believe that, because I would not do that. And if the non-native would do that, then my mind cannot comprehend the non-native. That would mean that the non-native is not human, that they are an abomination in the world because the world created them, and then they turn around to create, to destroy the world. So I do not buy it. that people are doing this of their free will. There is something that has captured 7 billion people's minds on this planet. And I will say that it is not human, that it is not of this earth. Because anything of this earth would not destroy its mother. In order for it to do that, it would be so corrupt, so abominative, and then, again, that's where I say, I can't believe it. I can't see that the non-native would be so abominated that they would kill, rape, murder, destroy, like what they are doing in the world. Yes, you are doing it. You have done it. You continue to do it. But I say that this is not your design. You are not designed for this. As with the native, it had to be killed in the native, and we had to be changed. Who would change? Who would do that? Would a human do that to another human? No. Only something that wants to enslave the humans, to do something that, whatever it is that's enslaving, wants the humans to do. Now, when we see that the document is all about a business arrangement, then you can see that it's basically business people. It's business. But this business, it's not of this earth. It is not of humans. It is different. So anyways, when you see the document and everything that it is said, it's kind of hard to understand it or believe it from back then. But this was created in 1835, renewed in 1835, created 1665. Now let's move ahead to 1921 with this document from the Department of Indian Affairs. I'll read it off to you, and then we'll go over certain points. It is observed with alarm that the holding of dances by the Indians on their reserves is on the increase, and that these practices tend to disorganize the efforts which the department is putting forth to make them self-supporting. The efforts that the Department of Indian Affairs, it's identified here. What are the efforts that they're putting forward? The Department of Indian Affairs says it here, the efforts they're putting forward, but doesn't identify it. It's identified hundreds of years earlier what the efforts of that department is. And that is to have, again, the free access to destroying the land, destroying the waters, all of that stuff. So it identifies that the Indians dancing, their songs and dances, interferes with that practice. It interferes with business. How could me sing a song and dancing interfere with the British Crown's corrupt ways of spreading colonization and destruction to the earth? How does that interfere with it? Well, my songs and dances are my identity. My identity of protecting the land comes from my spirituality, which is expressed in my songs and my dances. So my songs and my dances are not just songs and dances, they are actual tools of power that were so powerful that one native carrying out their song and their dance interferes with the efforts which the department is putting forward. Just one person. Why just one person? It doesn't say it in this document, but it says it in the other document that they created hundreds of years earlier that says as long as there is an Indian in the country, which means as long as there's one Indian in the country, they cannot do these things. Why? Because that Indian in the country carrying out their songs and dances is within their identity. As long as they're within their identity, they can access this for the truth of what it is to reverse it. Anyways, I have therefore to direct you to use your utmost endeavors to dissuade the Indians from excessive indulgence in the practice of dancing. Now, in the year 1921, that is, let's see, that's almost 100 years after this was renewed. And almost halfway through this, in the year 1880s, 1890s, that's when out west, that they, in pursuing their efforts identified in this document, that they said that they sent Colonel Custer and his army in to kill, to kill people, to murder them. And so when that happened, we all know the story there, is that the people were strong enough to resist. Why were the people strong enough to resist? We know what happened is that there was people who were bringing back the songs and the dances, people who were bringing back the ghost dance. And this put terror and fear into this corrupt organization of the British Crown. Put terror and fear into them, because it means it's spirit. And as long as there's spirit in the body can resist. Again, keep in mind the parallel to a woman being raped. The man on top of her, pounding her into submission, and he sees that she's resisting. As long as she's resisting, she can scratch his face. And if she scratches his face, she leaves evidence. There is proof of what is happening. So, like a man raping a woman, what he must do is pound her to complete submission, to the point of where he sees no more life in her, no more spirit, so that then he is free. He doesn't have to worry about her leaving any evidence upon his ugly face. So, the practicing from excessive indulgence in the practice of dancing, this is where the person gets spirit. Where, like that woman, the spirit will stay within her. As long as she stays in her identity, she will resist that rapist right to the end. And not only scratch his face, but do everything else possible. Pull out his hair, poke out his eyes, even anything, pull his ears. Anything that would be her resisting. That power to resist comes from her spirit, her songs, and her dances. The spirituality that she releases into the Indians in the country. So from here, you should suppress any dances which cause waste of time, interfere with the occupations of the Indians. Again, what's the occupations of the Indians? Well, 1921, this is after residential schools, so we know that it was the residential schools was to change, kill the Indian in the child, change the identity. What was our occupation before? To beautify the land, to care for the land, to protect the land. And now, after this contract, our occupations are to actually participate in the clear cutting of the land, to participate in the mining of our Mother Earth. So this is what unsettles us from the occupations of the Indians, unsettling them for serious work, injure their health, or encourage them in sloth and idleness. So imagine, our songs and our dances encourage sloth and idleness? You know, when the non-native came here, they were sick, they were smelly, they were unhealthy, they were all small. The only thing that they had was that they had guns, they had weapons, stuff that we didn't have. But when the non-native came here, you know what they seemed? They seemed the most healthy people that they have ever encountered. The strongest, physically, most healthy. Now, why were we healthy? Because we were not idle. Is an idle person, a person of sloth, are they healthy? No. They become overweight. They become unhealthy. So, a person of sloth and idleness is not the native people. People of sloth and idleness are in fact the non-native people. Because sloth is laziness. Why would you be lazy? If every day you have to get up, you got to work the land to eat, you have to catch your food. You wouldn't be lazy to stay alive. You're not lazy. You know who becomes lazy? People who are enslaved to do things that they wouldn't naturally do. So, slothness in those areas means that, well, I don't want to get up this morning to go to work. I'd rather stay sleeping because I don't want to go destroying. So anyways, you should also dissuade them if possible. Prevent them from leaving their reserves for the purpose of attending fairs. exhibitions, etc., when their absence would result in their own farms and other interests being neglected. It is realized that reasonable amusement and recreation should be enjoyed by Indians. Reasonable amusement and recreation. So let's identify something here. They first say to stop the Indians from singing and dancing. So that means to stop the natives from carrying out their spirituality, stop them from carrying out their identity. So then, what is reasonable amusement and recreation? They have created powwows to be the amusement and recreation. This is how we know that powwows are not ours. It is a creation of this corrupt organization, because they killed our people for carrying out the songs and dances. You think they're going to allow powwows that will be our songs and dances? Do you know where powwows came from? Powwows came from Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. Powwows are not ours. They are not our songs. They are not our ways. The way of the powwow is to slip the people into a business arrangement, which is what the powwows are today. They are business. That's what they are. So, as it goes on, but they should not be allowed to dissipate their energies, abandon themselves to demoralizing amusements. By the use of tact and firearms, you can obtain control and keep it. And this obstacle to continued progress will then disappear. What is the obstacle to continued progress? Well, first off, what is the progress? The progress is what's identified here. The progress of this corrupt organization is to clear cut all the trees, to dig up the land, to destroy the lakes, the rivers, to even make its way to destroying our grandmother moon. That is the progress of this serpent as it slithers across the land. So, you can see, this obstacle to continued progress will then disappear. The obstacle is the Indian. We are the obstacle. Does not identify anywhere else in the world that any other people anywhere in the world is an obstacle to the continued progress of this serpent being able to slither across the land and to have its free reign of destruction. So the native is the obstacle. And as it's identified, not in this document of 1921, but in this document going back to 1665, it's identified that what is the obstacle is the Indian in the country, generation to generation. And so, here, what will make this obstacle to the progress disappear? Well, it says it right here. By the use of tact and firearms, you can obtain control. So this is where, remember here, in the first part it says, dissuade the Indians from carrying out, performing their songs and dances. And then down here it says, by the use of tact and firearms. So what do you think that meant? There's somebody singing a song, and somebody's dancing, and along comes the representatives of this corrupt corporation, the RCMP, their army, comes along and kills the people that are singing and dancing. That is a fact. Now, they don't kill them by, let's say, hey, they come up to them and say, hey, you want to fight? Let's get into a fight, maybe fair fight. No, they kill them with guns. It's identified. Use of guns, firearms. Now, this is something to understand, not just within this document, but within this whole progress of this serpent slithering across the land, is that it identifies that the British Crown, again, the most corrupt organization on the planet, so dark and sinister that it identifies It's going to kill the people to get to the land, and after the land is destroyed, you can destroy the waters. After the water is destroyed, then you can get to the moon, the sun, and the moon. So, this way to destroy it is identified ever since they come into power, to wage war. This is the business of the British Crown, to wage war. People do not understand this. So anyways, not a little part of it. That's just for amusement. The rooms, halls, and other places in which Indians congregate should be under constant inspection. They should be scrubbed, fumigated, cleansed, or disinfected to prevent the dissemination of disease. The Indians should be instructed in regard to the matter of proper ventilation and the avoidance of overcrowding rooms where public assemblies are held. The proper arrangement should be made for the shelter of their horses and ponies. The agent will avail himself to the services of the medical attendant of his agency in this connection. Now, the agent with the medical attendant should make all this happen. Now, how did they do this? The agent, through their medical attendant, gave smallpox-infested blankets to the people. Again, which targets children and elders. And again, it's the elders that hold the culture, the knowledge, the wisdom, and it's the children that will perpetuate it into the future. And they know this, so that's who they target. It's identified in here. You just have to know how to read in between the lines. But what it implies is the halls where we gather should be scrubbed, fumigated, cleansed, and disinfected. It implies like the native people are not clean, are dirty. Now this is how, through a document like this, how you change history, how you change collective memory of history. Because the entire world knows that the non-native, not only when they came here, but for hundreds of years already, in their homelands, under this corrupt organization, lived in squalor. They were filthy, disgusting pigs. That is a fact. They were smelly, they were stinky, they never washed up. Was this the individual person's fault? No. It's because of the conditions that this corrupt organization put its own people under. Because of war, if you are war, you always got enemies. So Britain will always have enemies. So the fact that they always have enemies means that they have to go out and kill their enemies before their enemies kill them. Which means you can see it in history. How did it play out physically upon the land? Well, castles, forts popped up all over the country. And the people lived within just those castles, and the villages and the cities developed, like London, developed out of those areas. And the people lived just in there. That means they had the plant in there. They had their animals in there. And you know what they did? They went to the bathroom there. They went to the bathroom. They put their own excrement in the waters that they had to drink. They lived in that, in their houses. They weren't allowed to have clean water because there was no clean water. But in their houses, they had their pots that they would go to the bathroom in, and what would they do? They would just toss it out the window into the streets. And this is the reason why the Black Plague spread like wildfire throughout Europe. Not just in Britain, throughout Europe. Because they were all filthy, disgusting pigs. They were not clean. They were dirty. That is the reason why the French, or whoever, invented perfume to cover up their own smell. That's the reason why they invented makeup, to make themselves look clean. They were never clean. That's the reason why they had wigs. All of them wore wigs. You know why? Because their hair, as being unhealthy, was falling out. They were ashamed of the way that they looked themselves because of the conditions that they created. And from those conditions of living in their own piss and shit, the Black Plague spread. Disease, pestilence, famine, war, the Dark Ages. The Dark Ages is synonymous with this corrupt organization. They created the Dark Ages. And when you know everything that is in here and that is identified and continued in this document, you will see, look around you today and be honest with yourself and tell me, when did the Dark Ages stop? People think the Dark Ages is in some time, a long time ago, like who knows when, 1,000 years ago, 700 years ago, 800 years ago. The Dark Ages are as long as you are in war, as long as you have disease, famine, pestilence, the worst conditions you can imagine, humans mistreating other humans. That's the Dark Ages. Hey, look around you right now. The Dark Ages are at their peak. Technology has nothing to do with the evolution of humans. Technology is a lie that makes you believe that humans are evolving, when the only reality is, under this corrupt organization, the technology is designed to carry out all of these things, what is the degradation of life, which translates into the degradation of humanity. So what you think is technology and the advancement of humanity is bringing you quicker and quicker to your end. You don't have technology. You have reverse technology, deconstructive technology. And it is that technology that is controlled, again, by this corrupt organization to the point of identifying how they will destroy the entire world. And so this document here, which you can see is, again, the year 1921. It's because it wasn't long after Wounded Knee the people were rising up again. And after 1921, this is when Wild West, Buffalo Bill's Wild West show that went around the country showed all the natives that because we were living so poor that we needed to have some type of something to keep us alive. This is when the Buffalo Bill's Wild West show going across the country showed the native people how to get into business. And the business they got into was pretending to be natives, to begin powwows. And across the country started, like here in Kahnawake, Indian villages, putting on shows, becoming not the native, but becoming a business partner to this corrupt organization. There is something that has happened to humans, something that humans are not aware of. And in the world today, you look around you, humans have pushed themselves once again to the verge of war, to the verge of utterly destroying absolutely everything. This comes in cycles. Throughout time, this corrupt organization has began their wars, started their wars, done their efforts of putting smallpox-infested blankets, of colonization. All these negative efforts are done in ceremony. These people must do ceremony to kill people. Whatever ceremony we have, they have the exact same ceremony, but opposite. So if we're doing a planting ceremony, you know what they're doing? The opposite, a destruction ceremony. So when they kill, there is always a ceremony that they do beforehand. And the ceremonies that they do are always, like us, in rhythm with the cycles of creation. So we are coming up to a very big cycle. And that cycle is going to play out on August 21st, where there is going to be, as everybody knows now, the complete solar eclipse that is going to pass entirely right across the heart section, the midsection of Turtle Island. And this will be a calling, an awakening to all my people. I'm not talking about native people, because the native people alive today are not my people. They are her people. All the people within the elective band councils, all the peoples that have incorporated themselves, you belong to her. You belong to them. You are not my people. I stand in the middle of a bunch of people that you may think are my people. They kind of look like me, but they look more like you now. They no longer look like me. They no longer act like me. They no longer know their songs, their ceremonies, their dances. They are no longer within their identity to identify or to say that they are an Indian in the country. They do not qualify to meet that standard. And so, what is going to happen as we are approaching August 21st in this total solar eclipse? This corrupt organization is going to do their ceremony again, and they are going to rain war down upon the people of the earth. Because the people of the earth, something is wrong. There's a piece of your brain missing, that you can't think proper, that you are carrying out the destruction, carrying out the work of this one corrupt family, the 1%. The entire world is carrying out the corruption of the 1%. And this is why in the previous years, recent years, that every so-called democracy, which is the British Crown, every so-called democracy on earth, everywhere around the world, everybody was protesting against the 1%. Now explain to me, if democracies work on the majorities, how could every country on earth where the majorities were fighting against the 1%, how do they all become subdued then by the 1%? Like here in so-called Canada, Justin Trudeau, Donald Trump, in France, everywhere, Britain, everywhere, in Russia, it's the 1%. How did this happen? The people of the world believe, they know what they're doing. You believe, you believe in your democracy, but your democracy, it's not democracy, it's democapitalism. As long as your head is in a belief of whatever you think democracy is, you are not in reality. The democapitalism is what controls you, because it is that corrupt organization controlling this process of capitalism. And this corrupt organization, like here in Canada, you believe you're in a democracy. How could you be in a democracy, whatever you believe that is, if all the people vote in the 1% guy, Justin Trudeau, and then he goes and pledges his allegiance to this woman they call the Queen? That's not a democracy. You are truly in democapitalism. And everything that it touches, the combination of democracy and capitalism, the reason why it is democapitalism, because everything it touches, it turns to crap. It destroys everything. This is the people of the earth. How did you become subdued? How is it that you are destroying the house that you live in, that we live in? Like we said, something is missing from your brain. Something. You don't know what it is, but we know what it is. And we have the medicine. We can give you the medicine that will show you the truth of what has been in front of your eyes for hundreds of years without you saying you didn't realize. You have been in cognitive dissonance. You are cognitive dissonance. Because democracy, to participate in it, it is a self-inflicted state of schizophrenia upon anyone that participates, and it makes nations schizophrenic. Like here in so-called Canada, you have this party against that party, and they conduct themselves so disrespectfully. So we need to examine this behavior in these so-called halls of government of democracies. You look at how they are schizophrenic. You have this party, that party, other parties, and then within each of those parties, you have, what's the term I'm thinking of here? When somebody goes and lobbyists. So you have a party here. If you got 3 parties and then you got 100 different lobbyists coming to these parties, that means those 3 are divided into 300 other factions. So if you think of that, government is supposed to be how we decide things, so it is the collective thinking process. So democracy, the collective thinking process, creates many different identities. The schizophrenic mind, the schizophrenic society. And this is why these so-called first world countries of democracy have the highest rates of mental illness in the world, because it is self-inflicted upon you. But of course, as you are there, you will not accept it, you will not see it. But for those of you who are in the epitome of democracy today, in the United States, you tell me that you are not schizophrenic. Look at your society. You are killing yourself in the streets. You are killing women in the streets in the name of white supremacy. This corrupt organization, the white supremacists. Okay, so when we look at this progression, since the year 1665, from the time that they first made this document identifying what their intent was, it is clear, no one can deny, that they did in fact set out to kill all the so-called Indians in the country, that they did in fact set out to destroy the land, that they are attacking, the waters are being destroyed, the lakes are drying up, the rivers are drying up, that they are in fact moving to destroy our grandmother moon. And so when we see this, it is undeniable, the progress as they identify their progress. It has been unhindered, and our people have become willing participants within this. Now, I speak not to my people. I speak to the non-native, because my people have become subdued also. I speak to you, the non-native people, to examine your lives. Examine what it is you are doing. Examine what is about to happen to you again. When you look at, again, in all these first world countries, so-called democracies, the turmoil that exists in each place, what is happening is that the people are going to be, once again, in the same period of time, under the same circumstances where you were once before. And this will be for you to examine where in history, but I will say to you that you are again where you had the Black Plague, where you had disease, famine, pestilence, where you had mass starvation. But this time, it is going to be far worse upon you. This time, the people are going to implode. There will be nobody that is going to survive this final wave of destruction. And so, as we approach August 21st, what everybody should do is, of course, return back to your identity. Return back to examine who you are, what your practices are, what you are doing. Think about what you say your beliefs are, especially if you are religious. If your mind is religified, be honest with yourself if you are actually following your religion. And in your religions, examine your religion to see if it is truthful. Because I will say to you outright that of the Catholic religion, that has nothing to do with that man they call Jesus Christ. Has nothing to do with him. If that man, Jesus Christ, who you revere so much, walked on this earth today, he would burn down all your churches. He would chastise all your so-called priests, right up to that man they call the Pope, for protecting and harboring child rapists, for protecting and harboring people of genocide. So examine yourself and see if you can be content with who you are. We are approaching this big cycle, and in this big cycle, we are carrying out our law recital to renew our identity. And we know that on your side of the coin, on the opposite side of the coin, they will do the same. Your democracies are getting ready to wage war upon everyone and everything. This, of course, is a self-introspective. So we say, return to the water. On the 21st, when the time of that complete total solar eclipse, go to the waters. All the women, speak to the water, because the water is you. The water is female. And that is the power of life, the power that the women carry within them. That is the amniotic fluid of creation. Return to that water and speak to that water and identify what you want. Women of the world, that you want love to return. That you want a true man, and not these piss-poor examples of guys that exist in this world today, but men that will rise up and protect and defend their mother, that will protect our Mother Earth, not guys that are destroying her. And the same thing, you guys, the men of this world, on that day, put your hands into the soil, work our Mother Earth, feel her power and her energy, and ask for your true identity to return, to be men of peace, to be men who will protect the lives of the life givers, men that will protect our life giver. Now we'll go up.
Now consider that was almost 4 years ago that that video was made, and what has gone on between August 21st, 2017 to this day. Know what side you're on, know who you are, and join us if you're ready to be the sovereign and be connected to Mother Earth, Father Sky, the presence of all presence that's here to create and co-create and nourish and thrive, because you deserve and everyone deserves their best, only world.